But what's caused a shift in my own perception is the sophistication with which you can now analyse not just who's saying it, but what's being said and the effect of what's being said. And being able to tie up that sort of information and the interpretation of that onto what seemed to me still to be the fundamentals of good consulting, which is, to find out what's medically the problem and also what the patient wants from you, and find a way of developing a plan that reconciles those two agendas. And I think one of the great strengths of Clinitalk, and I think it's probably been a mutual benefit, is that exam structure has found its way into the way that Clinitalk gives its feedback in terms of those. Focusing on particularly on those areas, and it's also, I think, it has meant that the users of Clinitalk, who are predominantly at some point going to be SCA candidates themselves, are getting feedback that maps very nicely onto the way they know they're going to be assessed in due course.
In summary, I'd say Clinitalk gives structured feedback, greater consistency, scalable observation, but it does give you data-informed discussion points. For trainers who are linked to their accounts, they can actually look at it much more, and then they can make their COP discussions faster, more focused, and more evidence-informed.
I was impressed by the depth, the detail, and the accuracy of its assessments. So that's the first sort of, I wonder what it's like kind of feeling that you put out first. And as a trainer oneself, you might see it as a first instant threat. It's like, right, is this here to replace me, kind of thing. So it was curiosity at first, and being very impressed with how well it worked. The level of detail and what it was able to sort of perceive from a transcript alone, because it's not unable to pick non-verbal things. So I was very impressed by what it was able to pick up. And then in terms of the actual use with my trainee at the time, I think one thing I really thought was unique to using it, which as a trainer I wouldn't be able to do, is to look at trends. Because you can have the system running in the background for all the consultations for a week or whatever, and it'll then give you a trend of saying, well, you have a tendency to do, run late. Perhaps that's a bad example because that's very obvious, but sort of miss cues, or not showing a lot of kindness, verbally at least. And so it was very good at doing that, because that's not something I'm able to do. I can sort of analyze a case, a video, sit in for a supervised clinic, but I'm not able to sit there all the time and see what the trends are. So I think that's where it's unique in its ability. But then we said, well, could we have done it a bit better, or could we have done it in a way that the trainee or the patient might have been feeling less disappointed with the outcome? So that felt like quite advanced kind of questioning of a system. And it was really impressive. The reply it gave was very practical, with sort of, making clear that this isn't your decision, that you're not wanting to help the patient, that's above you. Sort of detach yourself from that decision in a way. It says, why didn't you show the patient written down where it says that that's not available in the NHS? And it gave other practical help, which was really impressive. So I thought that was really quick, really good. I mean, as a trainer, I'd like to think I can come up with something similar, but to do that in a case I didn't see very quickly, suddenly going back on it, I certainly wouldn't be able to quote a patient back because I wasn't present. So it's really good for a sort of retrospective analysis, certainly where you weren't part of it.
So with my current two trainees, they're both ST3, hoping to take the exam in the next 2 to 3 months, and we've been using Clinitalk for about 2 months. And what I'm finding is that it's really easy to use. I've developed a little structure where we look at the case, what the case was about, and the knowledge. We look at the feedback from the Clinitalk app, and perhaps pick 1 or 2 things they particularly want to look at, whether it's ideas, concerns, expectations, or psychosocial impact. We then listen to the whole transcript, listen to the whole consultation, and see where we agree, or what we think that they could have done differently. And then usually we would pick 1 or 2 things for them to work on. And the great thing is I can see them recording consultations through the week, and then we'll pick it up the next week. There's still a place for the video consultation. I'm finding it's much easier to get trainees to do the recordings than it is to get the camera and set it up. So I'm certainly getting a high volume of recorded consultations.
The feedback that the Clinitalk gave me, having that feedback for the exam was, I think, the thing that got me through, really. I wanted to feedback that my supervisor watched back some of my videos and looked at the feedback it gave and said that she really agreed with it. I actually also really liked the way that it gave you suggestions as to what questions you could have asked, or in terms of, empathy. Like if I remember a few times I was being too repetitive, like saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." It actually gave me suggestions for alternative ways to give that empathy statement, which was quite nice. Because you've just got to try different phrases and kind of see what works for you, isn't it?
My name is Karol Waszczyk. I'm a newly qualified GP from Worcestershire. With Clinitalk, I was able to focus better on the patient-doctor talking times balance, not only for the introduction of the consultation, but also for the whole process, which to me seemed it gave the consultation a more natural feel, felt to me that it had better outcomes, and also reflected on my trainer feedback. I honestly believe the Clinitalk allowed me to pass the SCA on the first try.
Hi, my name is Chidinma. I recently passed the SCA exams, and one of the resources that I used for this exam was the Clinitalk app. I found the feedback section very useful, especially with giving feedback as to how I consulted. I found it useful in the sense that I was able to bring up my eyes earlier in consultations, able to get the psychosocial, always accurately get the psychosocial aspect and the patient's impact in almost in all the consultations that I actually did. And also, it also helped with trying to closely align my management plans with the current NICE guidelines.
Whilst it also analyses your consultations and provides you that feedback that you normally get with your ES, but it just means that you get so much more feedback a lot of the time. So that, you know, those were the features that I found most useful, but there will be others for other people, and I felt that, you know, it really did help me when I was preparing for my SCA and just generally preparing for life as a qualified GP.
This app really helped me through the preparation to my SCA. Just preparing for the exam while working, so this is 2 for 1. So I encourage you to use the app. This is my personal experience. Thanks a lot.
I started using the Clinitalk app, which I think really helped. I think this was a really honest feedback with the Clinitalk app rather than like colleagues, because it does give you what you did. It's really, really specific into what you said, what didn't say, and categorizes into like green, red, and orange, which I think really helped because, you know, in a busy day, you just want to look at what you did. And sometimes I would just go home and read what I did and what I didn't. Sometimes it's not feasible to do it within the practice.
We've put in our paper in the Green Journal based on trends from the 18,000 plus consultations we've had. And for me, the heartening thing is not only is it a short-term improvement over the first 3 or 4 months, but over 20 months, that improvement, that behavioural change has actually stayed on. And that's for me the value of practice rather than attending a course. So hopefully when the paper's published, people can read it a bit more. But what we're doing through that feedback is embedding, should we say, permanent change. That is learning in action. And actually it fits in. I don't know if you've read Stanislas Dehaene's book, How We Learn. He talks about one of the pillars of learning is making mistakes and reflecting on those mistakes. So in some ways, that's, I think, the underpinning why we're seeing consistent changes in behavior. And at the end of the day, that means better, safer GPs. So that's one thing, I think. And the other good thing, Nick, isn't it, that we've got 18 VTSs signed up for Clinitalk, and the fact we'll be able to cover an area, we might be able to actually compare and contrast a larger number of trainees and just start making an attempt. I know many attempts, and this multifactorial differential attainment, to understand what are the critical success factors in exam success. That's what I want to see, and I'm really excited with so many trainees that allows that comparison. And what I think Clinitalk does really well is that consultation sequencing. Was sufficient information gathered first? Was managed appropriately individualized? And did it actually follow a logical data gathering? And what I like about Clinitalk, it does distinguish between acknowledging a cue and exploring a cue. And I think that's the big difference. It's all very well acknowledging it, but you really got to explore it. And that's central to high level performance in the exam. Be the GP you want to be with more practice. And if Clinitalk can be that turbo boost, that's what we want.